Welcome to another episode of Out from the Horrorbox. I'm your smiling host, Dom, and we're going to look at the 2022 supernatural horror film, Smile. I remember seeing the trailer for this film, and I kind of brushed it off thinking it looked kind of silly. Like the same feeling I got from the trailer for Truth or Dare. Just a little ridiculous. Then I saw some stills from the end of the film, and I decided to watch it, and man, did I really underestimate this film. So I'm going to go over my thoughts later in the episode, but for now, let's get straight into it. After premiering his short film, Laura Hasn't Slept, at South by Southwest, and winning the Special Jury Recognition Prize for South by Southwest Midnight Short category, Parker Finn was tapped by Paramount Pictures to write and direct a feature adaptation of the short. The story of the short film goes, while telling her therapist Dr. Parsons about a recurring nightmare in which a sinister man constantly smiles at her, Laura Weaver discovers that she is still experiencing the nightmare when Dr. Parsons morphs into a grotesque creature that wants to force Laura to look at it. Refusing to look, Laura runs out of the room. She returns a few moments later, believing the monster is gone. However, it suddenly appears in front of her, causing her to go insane and scream as she rips off her own face. In September 2021, the film was announced under the title Something's Wrong with Rose, with principal photography beginning on October 11, 2021, and wrapping on November 24, 2021. Some filming locations included the Murphy Varnish Lofts, Rutgers, New Jersey Medical School in Newark, and Lewis Morris Park in Morristown. Editing and post-production were completed in May 2022. Visual effects were done by the Artery and was supervised by Yuval Levy and Vico Charbonny. That's when the film was simply retitled Smile. The film score was composed by Cristobal Tapia de Ver. For practical effects, Finn recruited Alec Guinness and Tom Woodruff Jr. of Amalgamated Dynamics, who he described as a major influence in wanting to be a horror filmmaker for their work in films such as Aliens. During Major League Baseball, this is something that I thought was kind of creepy. The weekend before the film's release, a viral marketing stunt occurred as the studio's marketing team purchased seats behind home plate, with actors smiling maniacally into the camera for the pitcher-batter shot for extended periods of time. Some of the actors wore shirts with the name and logo of the film on the front. And I remember it become like a viral thing, like on some like of the like spooky like sites that you see here and there, like the top 5 spookiest things or scariest things or ghosts caught on tape things across YouTube. You would see like these pop up, and people are like, oh, are these people under the influence of this or this and that? And it's like, it's obviously marketing for this film. And I thought it was kind of funny that people would actually take these shots and be like, oh, look at it, is that real? Is it really like the cause of this? And maybe they were part of it. Like maybe they were getting paid to be, you know, like sometimes you pay some of these influencers to talk about it too. And maybe they were paid to do it a little bit, but maybe they weren't. But at the same time, it's still funny that they brought this up. And I know I'm going a little too much into it, but it just to me kind of made me laugh and chuckle because I'm like, it's obviously part of their marketing, or obviously staged. Like, people aren't just going to sit there and smile unless they're trying to troll themselves. But for the most part, people don't just sit there and smile at the camera like that. So, let's get straight into the movie, Smile.
What is it you like to talk about?
My patient. Hi. I know you're nervous. I just want to have a chat.
I'm seeing something no one else can see except for me. It's smiling at me. Oh my God!
Yesterday, a patient in your care died brutally in front of you.
I need to find an explanation for what happened.
It's smiling at me. It's smiling at me.
You're going to die! You're going to die! You're going to die! You're going to
I found 20 cases involving 19 victims with a direct line linking them all together.
You said only 19.
Why is it that everybody else who's seen it is dead and you're alive? I've seen it too.
You?
How long between each victim's death?
None of them survived longer than a week.
Today's my 4th day. I am not gonna keep running. I have to face it.
How does it make you feel?
I'm just really scared that something bad is going to happen.
Laura Weaver, played by Caitlin Stacy, a graduate student, arrives at a psychiatric ward. She is seen by therapist Dr. Rose Cotter, played by Susie Bacon. Laura explains that she witnessed her art history professor die by suicide a few days earlier. Laura then claims that an entity that only she can see, taking the form of smiling people, has been terrorizing her, and has told her that she's going to die, and nobody believed her when she told them. Soon after, Laura stumbles to the floor and begins screaming. After Rose calls for help, she sees Laura standing up, calm and smiling. With a shard of broken pottery, Laura kills herself by slitting her throat. Later on, Rose sees a manic patient, Carl, played by Jack Socket, smiling and shouting that she is going to die. Rose calls for a nurse to restrain him, only to see he has been asleep the whole time. Concerned for Rose's mental well-being, her supervisor, Dr. Morgan Desai, played by Cal Penn, gives her a week off. As the days go on, Rose's hallucinations continue. This leads everyone around her to believe she's becoming unhinged and possibly dangerous. She visits her former therapist, Dr. Madeline Northcott, played by Robin Weingart, who suggests that her problems stem from her abusive and mentally ill mother, who died from an overdose which she witnessed as a child. Later, Rose attends her nephew's birthday party. The gift Rose has brought has been replaced by her dead cat, Mustache, horrifying the children. This leads to a public breakdown in which Rose sees one of the party guests smiling at her, causing her to trip back into a glass table, cutting her wrists. The incident convinces Rose that she has fallen victim to this curse that Laura had. However, when Rose tries to tell her fiancé Trevor, played by Jesse T. Usher, he doesn't listen, as well as everyone else starts thinking she's crazy. Upon learning that Laura's professor was grinning at her before his death, Rose visits his widow, Victoria, played by Jodi Reyes. Rose learns that the professor had also witnessed a suicide shortly before his own. Rose reaches out to her ex-boyfriend Joel, played by Kyle Gallner, a police detective, to go through old police records. They find several cases of people having died by suicide in front of someone else, all of whom had recently witnessed a suicide themselves. Rose tries to patch things up with her sister, Holly, played by Gillian Zinser, and Trevor, but finds that Trevor has contacted Dr. Northcott to help him with the situation with Rose, without talking to Rose first. Feeling betrayed, Rose chastises Trevor, saying that she trusted him, and all he did was walk away from her when she needed him. Holly compares Rose's behavior to their late mother, but this only enrages Rose, and, having had enough of being pushed around by everyone, responds back by saying that Holly knows nothing of what happened. Rose's hallucinations intensify. When Joel discovers that nearly all the witnesses died within a week of seeing the previous suicide, he comes to believe that Rose is cursed. The only exception was Robert Telly, played by Rob Morgan, who murdered someone else instead of committing suicide. Rose and Joel visit him in jail, where he claims that the entity feeds on trauma, and the only way to escape it is to brutally kill someone in front of a witness to traumatize them. Rose angrily rejects the option and leaves. She is confronted at home by the entity in Dr. Northcott's form, where the entity gleefully warns her that she is running out of time. She impulsively drives to her hospital with a knife and walks into the hospital and murders Carl in front of Morgan. But he rips off his face, revealing that she is in another hallucination. Morgan wakes Rose, who fell asleep in her car. He notices her with the knife, but she speeds away, prompting him to alert the police. Rose drives to her abandoned family home, realizing that she cannot pass on the entity's curse if she remains alone. Rose confronts the entity in the form of her mother, and it is revealed that as a child, Rose found her mother as she was dying from a drug overdose, but decided not to get help. The entity attacks Rose and pins her to the floor, but she smashes a lamp over its head, setting it on fire, symbolically letting go of her trauma. Rose drives back to Joel's house, asking to stay the night, but Joel starts to smile at her and tells her he'll stay with her forever, showing that Rose was in a hallucination the whole time. Joel pulls up to the house, having tracked Rose's phone. She panics and runs back inside, barricading herself in the house, so Joel cannot have the curse passed on to him. But the entity reveals itself, having still been in the house, and rips off its skin to reveal its true form, a skinless, semi-humanoid monstrosity whose body is made from the previous victims that it consumed, with multiple sets of malformed jaws nesting within an enormous smiling mouth. The sight of the entity's true form is so frighteningly traumatic to Rose that it causes her to have a nervous breakdown, and she falls into a trauma-induced paralysis. Having succeeded at finally breaking Rose's mind, the entity proceeds to feed on her accumulated trauma by forcing itself inside her body through her mouth and merging with her psyche. Joel breaks down the front door and begins a short search, only to see Rose set herself on fire with a smile, passing the curse on to him. Smile ended up grossing $105.9 million in the US and Canada, with a total worldwide gross of $217.4 million on a budget estimated at $17 million. So for any major studio, it would be a no-brainer to jump straight into production of a sequel. During interviews from November through December in 2022, writer-director Parker Finn stated that he had intentionally left portions of the film ambiguous, which is pretty much what any writer who has more material for the story would do, with various plot lines unresolved while expressing interest in exploring those details in a potential sequel. Finn went on to state that while additional installments may explore the backstory of the entity, he would like to keep its mysterious nature intact. He noted that a sequel movie would be notably different from the first, stating that he believed there's still a lot of interesting stuff to explore in the world of Smile. I'd want to make sure that there's a new, exciting, fresh way into it that the audience isn't anticipating. I also want to find some new ways to scare them and unnerve them. This April of 2023, Paramount Pictures officially announced at Comic-Con during the same year that a sequel has been greenlit and it is in pre-production, with Parker Finn once again serving as writer-director. The sequel is tentatively slated for release in 2024, although now that the writer's strike has happened, I'm not sure if that is still slated for 2024. Maybe it might be pushed back. That again, that was before the writer's strike, so maybe it might already still be like past that point where the pre-production of the writing is done, but it could still be in that early stage. Maybe it's already gone past that, so then yes, okay, so slated for 2024. Maybe it might be pushed back a little bit more, but who knows. Right now it's kind of an ambiguous time right now with a lot of projects, like Marvel's pushed back, DC's pushed things back. A lot of studios, Universal, Paramount too, has pushed a lot of things back just due to the writer's strike. So we'll have to keep you guys informed about that as things go on, and we'll see. Hopefully, I really would like to see a sequel next year, 2024. But if we don't get one for a little bit, I wouldn't be like too upset. Kill Counter. Now is the segment of the podcast where we look at all the deaths and murders in the film Smile. There are a total of 2 deaths in the film. The cat Mustache is killed, but I don't count animals as part of the counter, so let's get into the deaths. Early on in the film, we see Laura Weaver coming to Rose for some kind of help with the entity. Laura explains that something is taking the form of people smiling and terrorizing her, trying to get her to kill herself. Laura stumbles back and begins screaming, just staring at Rose. So Rose calls for help. When Rose looks back, she sees Laura standing, calm and smiling. Then she commits suicide by cutting her throat from ear to ear with a shard of broken vase under the control of the Smile entity. Moving on to the second death. At the end of the film, Rose goes back to her abandoned family home so she won't pass on the curse if she dies. After confronting the entity disguised as her dead mother, she sets the house on fire and goes to Joel's house. But when Joel starts smiling, Rose discovers that she's been hallucinating the whole time. Joel arrives at her old house and tries to enter, but finds it barricaded. The entity reveals its true form, which is a horrifying monster with jaws and mouths within mouths. An eldritch horror. It forces its way inside of Rose. Joel breaks in and sees Rose committing suicide by burning herself to death with gasoline. There isn't a lot of deaths in the film, though not every film needs a high body count to be scary. The entity is designed along with the jump scares, I think, make it pretty amazing. Now we move on to the part of the podcast where I give my final thoughts on the film and say whether or not you should watch it. If this was around the time the film came out and I only judged the film based on the trailer, I would have dismissed the movie, and that's exactly what I did. It looked, at least from the trailer, a little ridiculous. Like it would be over the top or something. But I heard really good reviews from people online and friends. So I decided to watch the film for myself. Also, I was a little spoiled from photos I saw on the internet. I ended up seeing the monster beforehand, and I was like, what is this from? And I found out it was from this film, and I was like, okay, maybe I'll watch it. Then, after seeing the film and giving it a chance, I'm kicking myself now for not seeing it in theaters. This movie was great. It's a slow burn, and I love the mystery that builds from Laura's interaction with something we can't see. And once we do see the entity, oh my god, it's great and horrific. The acting is great, and for a first-time director, just like The Babadook, it's a great start to hopefully a long career. And just like The Babadook, this movie is great at presenting past trauma. Rose's mother ODing in front of her in the form of an entity that stalks those that have witnessed something traumatic. And it shows up at times to ruin relationships, work, or your everyday life. And that's kind of how trauma works in the real life. Like, sometimes it'll just come back and it ruins everything for you. Some people are able to overcome it, but at a cost. Look at Robert Talley in the film. He's able to get rid of it by killing another person. And that's not to say that's how you deal with moving on from trauma, like, at all. Like, you don't hurt other people. And I think that's what the film is trying to explain, is, like, you're not supposed to pass it on by hurting other people. I think that hopefully in future installments, we see maybe, like, forgiveness or building a bond will help whoever is possessed by the entity without having to create more trauma. Because we see that she's trying to end herself on her own terms, right? And that's just creating more trauma, though, right? Like, that's trauma for other people. Like, they're not seeing it in front of them, but it's still hurting other people. And I think that's why it didn't work to defeat the entity or the monster, right? Like, trauma isn't killed by more trauma. It's by dealing with it. It's by confronting it. It's by understanding why it's there. And, like, either, like I said, maybe they need forgiveness. Maybe they need to forgive other people. Maybe they need to build a bridge to other people and let people in, or let people understand why they hurt. And that maybe in the future, and maybe like another installment, like that's a great way to show and like talk about like trauma and overcoming trauma in a way without having to like just explain it and right to your face. Like, show, don't tell. Like, show them like creating something. Maybe in the future you see someone, instead of like her, she's dealing with her mom's death that she saw in front of her, maybe talking to somebody, going through, and like them understanding, maybe them coming together helps to defeat whatever it is, this entity that moves on through trauma, kind of like the monster from It Follows, and the Babadook. Another thing, the part where Rose sees the entity's true form and just shuts down, is probably one of the most realistic parts. Not the entity itself, but the idea that if confronted by something like this, a monster or creature that our minds cannot fathom standing in front of us, our minds would just go haywire. I've heard and discussed this with my friends before. We're able to watch these things in movies because our brains know that it's made up. We know that it's fiction. We know that someone made that somewhere, that you can go to it, you can touch it, or even in CG, right? Like, CG is more fake than anything. It doesn't exist in a real place. That isn't something that is there in real life. And we're able to watch these things because we know they're made up, right? But if we genuinely saw this multi-mouthed, deformed thing in front of us in real life, this horror from beyond, from somewhere, some nightmare, your brain would just turn to mush and you'd like shit your pants. There are things out there our little minds like cannot comprehend, and because of that, like, I feel like it's more realistic. You would just shut down. Like, people would say, oh, I'd fight this, I'd fight it off, I'd do this, I'd do that. It's like, no, you won't. Like, if you saw that in real life, if you saw something like, even if you saw something like, I was like, one example I brought up to my friend was like killer clowns, right? Killer clowns from outer space. They're silly, they're ridiculous, whatever. But if you saw that in real life, like if that was a real thing in real life, your mind would shut off. You would have such a breakdown because this thing exists and it's so disturbing that you wouldn't even know what to do. Like your mind couldn't comprehend what it's seeing. And I love that. I love this idea that, like, because it's like what H.P. Lovecraft talks about, where the horrors are so they're indescribable because your mind cannot comprehend it. Your mind is not able to, because there are these things that are incomprehensible. And to me, that's more horrific than like seeing the monster itself, or or deaths or whatever in a film. Like this idea that like it's so horrifying that it like breaks your mind. That's terrifying to me. So I haven't watched the short film, and I bring that up just because I want to watch it, because reading just the short film, and I know that it's just like a small portion of like what he adapted into the film, but like it sounds like a solid little film. I mean, it did win at South by Southwest, and also like since the sequel's being greenlit, I can't wait for like exploring this world more and seeing how Parker Finn expands the mythos, just where he goes with it. Like, I want to know what he's thinking and where he's going, because my mind goes one way, but he could go a completely other way. And I know it's dumb to kind of like, but I'm able to wrangle in this idea of like, oh, I have an idea of where it's going to go, but I still want to see where he goes. And if it doesn't go the way I'm thinking, fine. I'm not going to sit here and cry about it. But overall, this is a great movie to watch if you want something really scary on any night, honestly. Not just during like spooky season. There's some films that they work mainly during like Halloween and like October, and like when it's like nice and cold out, and the nights are getting longer, and you want something, you're getting cozy and you want to watch something scary. But this one, I watched it during the day, and it's still pretty scary. I gave this film 2 thumbs way up, and I'm still smiling about it. The design of the monster, the entity, or whatever it is, it's still going to stick with me, and it's still going to stick in my head, and that might be my favorite part of the film. But what's your favorite part? Did the film leave you smiling? Thank you all for listening, and please subscribe if you like what you hear, and then you'll get every episode downloaded. Have a strange, mysterious, or unexplained story? Are they fact? Did you craft a story yourself? If you'd like us to read your stories, you can email them to horrorboxpodcast@gmail.com. We'd love to read them on the podcast. We'd also like to post those stories to our socials on Instagram or TikTok @HorrorboxPodcast, where we also have updates and news. One last thing, if you like the podcast and would like to support the podcast, you can buy me a coffee. You can buy me a coffee at coffee.com/horrorboxpodcast. It would really help us out. We'll see you next time and hear what comes out from the horror box.